Welcome to ZN Life, a podcast brought to you by ZN, the OG digital agency in Brussels.
And welcome to this edition of the ZN Live podcast of 2025. I'd probably do that again because we still haven't figured out the name. So I'll try with another name just in case. So welcome to Zeitgeist Live. This is the first edition of our recorded podcast. I am delighted to have a very special guest, a special friend of mine, Clo Willaerts, who has been in the communication game for many decades, and we've known each other for as long. And Clo has worked in the corporate sector. She has worked in, she's an author of digital marketing books. She is a teacher. She is a speaker. She is a thinker. And she has some fantastic insights on what works in communication today. And what we're interested in is what will work in the future. So, Clo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, very, very happy to have you. And of course, we want to start with the still big topic of the year, which is, of course, AI. Now, it's hype. Everybody's talking about it. People are talking about too much. But the question is, what is it doing to the way we work? What is it doing to the internet? And what is it doing to content? Now, I know that you had some thoughts on some of the challenges that AI is creating. So tell us a little bit about what is your biggest concern, perhaps, around how AI is going to transform content?
Well, ChatGPT launched over 2 years ago, and it definitely did have an impact. The last time I saw something technology related have this much of an impact on the way we work and the way we live is in 2007 with the launch of the iPhone. And before that, maybe Google's search engine, and before that, the browser. So I think it's a big issue. And we've been living and working with all sorts of AIs, generative AI specifically in my case, for 2 years now. So we can look back and see, okay, what is different now? And specifically for marketing, for my neck of the woods, it changed everything. It changed everything. The content creation alone, it coincided with, so remember the pandemic, that was a serious crisis. And after that, the world just rolled into a cost of living crisis. And a lot of organizations had to cut costs. And then usually when an organization has to cut costs, they would rather not fire people. It's the marketing budget, right? So a lot of things that used to be outsourced to agencies, for example, are now being insourced. And there are people working in the marketing or communication department in a large bank, for example. They've been doing the same thing for years and outsourcing everything to, professional copywriters, translators, designers. And now all of a sudden they're being asked to do it themselves because the tools right now, in theory, allow you to create your own images for Instagram, your own short videos. I mean, there's CapCut. CapCut is ByteDance's video creation and editing tool. So it's created to make TikTok videos with it. But it is, wow. You can, it's if you should use it because it's very hard to explain. It has features in it. For example, the latest one I've been using is that it automatically removes the little stop words from what you're saying. So if you have this habit of saying like a lot when you're recording a video, it'll just track those in the video and then propose to remove them for you. That is like, or the automatic captioning. This is a type of tool that in theory makes it easy and possible for people who were not trained as professional video editors, for example, to create videos for the web and for social.
But what are you most concerned about in the negative side of things? And we're going to come back to the positive side because obviously I want to see what you are using it for and what you advise professionals. But I know that there's your favorite word, or at least a new word of the year that appeared. Tell us about that.
Well, there's a famous blogger and science fiction author, Cory Doctorow, launched the word "enshittification" in 2003, and his point is that we're seeing both on the internet and on social media a flood of really low quality content, and the fact that it's low quality is linked to generative AI. So it is now very easy to create a lot of content in a short amount of time, and a lot of people do. The result is that 90% of what I'm seeing is really bad. And I'll give one bad example from the advertising agency. So last year, Coca-Cola launched their famous Christmas campaign, the one with holidays are coming, with the trucks and the lights. And it was AI generated. And that could have been cool in, let's say, in March 2024, when you could make a point as a brand that what you were doing was AI generated. But by Christmas 2024, I'm thinking, really, because it was not good. It was simply not good. There were images in there that would simply, they were not, I remember there was a giraffe in one of them, and it was a really, that was, somebody approved of that video, and it was super crappy. And if you are like if you're a startup and you don't have a lot of financial resources, then I can understand that you say, okay, let's see, and if we can do it. But Coca-Cola, I mean, there's really no excuse. Toys R Us earlier that year also, they did a storytelling of the founder of Toys R Us. So he was being portrayed as a little boy, and in every frame the boy was different. It had different glasses, different hair. And I'm thinking, wow, again, somebody actually approved this to go live as a campaign. It's just not good enough. So specifically for the marketing industry and for people like me who train people who become professionals in the marketing industry, be better. Look at that text, look at that image, look at that video, and take a step back and ask yourself, is this actually helping the brand grow or not? Is it good enough? Is it in tune with our target audience? Does it fit in the social media platform where we're going? Because very often, but what I'm seeing, the answer is no. So you go back to the drawing board and do better.
But you're talking about there, I would say, the use of AI tools, which I think that in the cases you're mentioning, and I mean, of course, we're seeing a lot of that, where the fact that companies are using AI is part of a statement. It's just saying, look, we are trying this out. And I think part of the story is we know that it's not perfect yet, but we actually want to be kind of out there first to try to see how this kind of thing works. And it's a very overt use of AI. I mean, nobody's thinking that these are, it's not a deep fake. It's not something like that. So I think that's the story. Now, whether that's a good idea or not can be discussed. But I think it's not whether it's executed. Now, what I think what Corey Dr. Corey, sorry, means when he talks about this identification of the web content is the idea of kind of replicating content that looks human and that kind of morphs into 55 different versions of this generic kind of blur, which to some degree I think we're probably seeing on LinkedIn, where people write things that all seem to be the same. At the same time, a lot of that is just the way people communicate on LinkedIn. And I was reading actually about the potential for AI systems that are fed on the content that they read on the internet to gradually become only dependent on copies of content, and therefore it kind of potentially degenerating into some weird language. Again, that's a theory. I think, I'm sure you can find a way to train the AIs and say, be aware of this or close the data set or things like that. But my question to you about this general idea of replicating content on the web is, what do you think? We currently live in an age where we have content, and a lot of it is bad on the web. A lot of it was already generated by bots or trolls or, Russian disinformation people, things like that. And they were actually writing bad content almost deliberately because some of that worked quite well. So what do you think is really fundamentally going to change if you just have a lot more of that? If you multiply that by 10 or 100 or 1,000, do you think it changes the way we receive the content, or because we don't read all this content, or are we just going to have to change the way we consume our content on the internet?
Specifically for social media, I think the algorithms played a negative role in the success of this type of mass-produced AI-generated slop, because the engagement rate is the most important KPI for social media. So how does a post go viral? Because there's a lot of engagement. So by creating images that deliberately trigger people, and I remember last year it was like, have you seen a shrimp Jesus phenomenon?
I've seen various
Shrimp Jesus.
things around shrimp Jesus.
They will find ways with like crying babies in the middle of the rubble somewhere in a war zone. They will have shrimp Jesus. They will have things with little puppies in them. So they're images that somehow subconsciously trigger people into reacting. And then the algorithm picks up on that and thinks, oh, this is apparently a post that people like to engage with, and they will push it more into the stream. The economics behind it is, of course, it's so easy to create 100 of them. It takes only one for you to go viral to be successful. And particularly on Facebook, that is an issue, because Facebook allows you to edit your post after the fact. So what Shrimp Jesus does is to farm engagement. And as soon as the post goes viral, they change the image and the call to action into buy this shady crypto currency, for example. So there are some negative effects to the fact that these generative AI tools are available to a lot of people and they're being abused. On the other side, it is an opportunity because consumers were already overwhelmed by the amount of content and posts. You're seeing a lot in the course of the day, so you're overwhelmed. I think it is an opportunity for personal brands and for commercial brands to position themselves as a curator. This is what I do in my newsletter, the newsletter called Chaos and Amazement. So what I do, I go through thousands of social media posts, online articles, and I read them for you, and I cherry pick only the 10 or 15 ones that might be interesting. And that's why people follow me. Brands can do the same. They can say, okay, we understand you're vaguely interested into kitchen remodeling. It's very overwhelming, because then of course you get stuck in a bubble of kitchen remodeling videos on TikTok or on YouTube, and it doesn't help you. I've been there. It doesn't help you. You're overwhelmed. You still don't know what to order. So there is a lot of room and opportunity for people and brands who are willing to position themselves as the content curators and take that pressure away from the consumer. So it's not all bad, I think.
Now, you've been using ChatGPT and other AI tools right from the beginning. I remember you posting when you started using ChatGPT that you'd be happy to pay for it. That was before they had the premium option. So tell me a little bit, as a communicator, what do you see as the most useful ways that you use these tools? And when you look at marketing people, clients, what do you think they use it most effectively?
So as I said, we're now 2 years down the line, so there's a lot of tools out there, and literally every week there's new ones coming out. There's still an AI race going on. There's startups, there's investment money being thrown at startups that mention the word AI in their value proposition. And then all the big players, the Googles, the Amazons, are buying or investing in AI startups. So the race is on, which means that there's a lot of investment, a lot of new developments there. So if you do that as a professional and you use the free version and then after a while the premium version, because these tools are very good at converting you from a free user to a paying one, you actually make 3 types of enemies within your organization. The first one is IT. really doesn't like having applications and logins all over the place. When someone leaves, they do not know who had the login for that tool that was being used. They don't like the security aspect of it. So IT doesn't like what you're doing. That you have like a ChatGPT premium account, don't like it. Accounting similarly, because they it's being paid for by some Visa or Mastercard or God knows where. The invoices look funny if there aren't any invoices at all. There are subscription models, so once a year there's this cost, dropping out of the sky, out of the blue, from a company somewhere in Baltimore. So accounting really doesn't like it because they do not know the suppliers, they do not know where to put it. And then maybe next year the tool is not even going to be used anymore because it's not there anymore, or they're being absorbed by Google or something. And then thirdly, there's one of the other departments of legal. Oh, legal. You uploading company related data, like customer data, to someone's cloud makes them very, very nervous. So because of that, organizations are now sending questionnaires to their employees, like what tools are you using? What are you using them for? And the funny part is that like 1/3 of these employees lie to their employer about the AI tools. So they use ChatGPT, but they lie about it. So that is today's situation. So how do I handle that? First of all, I try to avoid having to pay for a tool for as long as possible. For example, if I need some text creating language model, I run what I call the Hunger Games. So in my browser, I have 3 tabs open. One is ChatGPT by OpenAI, one is Gemini by Google, and one is Claude by Anthropic. So they're very similar products, but completely different companies behind it. I feed each one of these 3 the same prompt, and then I send them into the woods, and then see which one does best. So actually, I play them against each other. Lately, I noticed that Claude is far superior to Gemini and ChatGPT. But sometimes, yesterday, I did a demo for a course on tools, and Gemini actually overperformed. But I can still keep using the free versions that way. Plus, sometimes, and then that's a lot of fun. That's me having fun. It's like the output from Claude, I will then improve through Gemini or ChatGPT. So I just keep using them one against the other. And then the advice I also give to anyone working in a professional environment is try to stay away from the specific narrow AIs that have just been launched, because you do not know what will happen to this little company. It's very, very expensive to run an AI based business, because someone has to pay for the bandwidth and the servers. It's very expensive. Even OpenAI is still burning millions of dollars every month on hosting alone. So do not jump on any new AI tool, except if you are doing it for the experiment. Is when I always say, spend 10% of your time, like half a day every week, to do an experiment. So you define what your goal is and then go all in for a month or 3 months. And then afterwards you stop the experiment, you delete everything, look back and think, what did we learn, right? You might use an app for that, but generally look at the software you already have. There's a very high chance today that what you need is already included in what you have. Microsoft, of course, is top of they are way years ahead of everyone else, and they had the insight to call the integration of, usually it's OpenAI products. They had the insight to call it Copilot. That is genius, really. You can use Bing and then summon the Copilot and use the latest ChatGPT version and DALL-E. I mean, it's there, it's free, it's in Bing. So in the future, Word, Excel, any Teams, any other Microsoft product will have some form of AI included. So why not look if it happens to be already built in? Adobe if you have a license for Adobe Creative Cloud, Firefly is fantastic. Canva.com is another one. So they have I think that today they call it Magic or Magic Studio or something like that. They have a whole collection of AI tools that you can use for your images, and these are platforms that you probably already use and that do not make those three departments that I mentioned earlier nervous.
Right. No, I think for me, the combination you described, Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT is also makes a lot of sense. They are, I think, the best generalist tools, and they all have slightly different strengths. I think Claude is basically the better writer. ChatGPT obviously combines the analysis, the research on the web, the live search, which is obviously very useful. But I think in terms of structure analysis and all that is probably the best one. And then Gemini, honestly, I struggle a little bit with Gemini, but for instance, it's the only one that can read videos from YouTube because it has, so the others don't do that. That's just, that's market. That's basically using their ownership of YouTube to go into that. And for certain things, it works better. But it's true. It's good to look at all three. And I also found that taking certain things from ChatGPT, putting it into Claude, and then getting it written a little bit better can be a very interesting experience. Now, in terms of the first thing we talked about is how you flood the internet with this bad content. I would say that there is an upside about improving a lot of the bad content that was going out today and making it potentially better, because, for example, if you're not a native speaker, it's much easier to write, and you can concentrate on what you're trying to say. So you can say, okay, this is the idea, help me to frame it. And I think there's a lot of information on the internet that is not, even if it's not, I'm not talking about the trolls and the bots, but it's just not interesting. And I think, I wouldn't mind having content that's really clarified and focused on the things that I am interested in, even with the help of AI. I think there's nothing wrong with using AI things. So, I know that you wrote a book, and on that book you used AI to basically help the writing experience. So how do you feel about, the positive view of this, where content becomes better, sharper, more relevant, and maybe more books? More books will be written with AI. I feel that people are almost inherently disturbed by the idea that a book written by AI has to be bad. My thinking is it really depends on how it was prompted, how it was edited, how it got to the final thing. Because you might end up with an excellent piece of writing. It just doesn't have to be with a human. I think this is almost like a human bias. So do you think there's a positive view of, not of increasing quality and relevance? And do you think more books are going to be written on AI? And do you think that's a bad or a good thing?
I think it's a romantic idea. And with romantic, I mean, I'm referring to a 19th century artistic wave, the romantic painters and writers that had a lot of Weltschmerz and longing for things that were not supposed to be. And from that time is this, I think, wrong idea that the artists should suffer for the art to be good. So it's as if the artist bled and sweated onto the artwork and spent months going hungry. It's called like these Russian novel writers, right? And then they're coughing up blood on their manuscript. Then the result is better because they worked harder for it. I do not agree with that. If you look at an artist like Andy Warhol, he mass-produced and outsourced a lot of his artwork, and it's still genius artwork, right? So, and that, I think, is why some people assume that if it is AI generated, it's not good, because the artist didn't sweat enough and bleed enough onto the work. It's the end result that counts. But I'm even more extreme when it comes to content. I think maybe we should move away from content marketing. And I know that sounds weird because my latest book is a handbook on content marketing. But I'm looking at AI to move away from using content to give input and get output from other platforms, AI driven or not, I think we should move away from using content for that. And ChatGPT is already moving that way. They're using agents. So
Yes.
it's not about the role of content in my life. My life is about doing things and wanting things. And that's what marketing taps into it. So whenever I'm feeling it's very chilly and outside and there's some interface, maybe I'm talking to a mirror, Snow White, the fairy tale Snow White. Her stepmom had this talking mirror. Does that ring a bell? So
Hmm.
the queen would sit in front of a talking mirror, and that mirror would tell her that she was beautiful. She would ask, "How do I look?" And the mirror would say, "You look beautiful." Until one day, of course, he said, "Your daughter, your stepdaughter, is more beautiful than you." That's my interface. I would like that. I would like a mirror where, put next to the front door, and then every time I go out, I check with the mirror, and then the mirror says, "Oh, it's going to rain. Don't forget your umbrella." And when I get back, I could glance to the mirror, and the mirror could say, "How was your day?" And I would briefly report on my day, and then, of course, this digital twin, this avatar, would glance from that what my action points would be and put stuff in my calendar, order things for me online, make arrangements for me. So that is actually the best way to interact with the platforms that have data on me and that can do things. Maybe we don't need this weird chatting interface for that anymore.
Yeah, it is interesting because you're talking about something that looks a lot like character AI, the companion,
Yes.
the digital companion. There was a piece about somebody who fell in love with his character,
Mhm.
committed suicide. So, but I think the argument there is about more the psychological
Yeah.
aspects and the safeguards that you have to build around it. But I think we're moving towards that. We're moving to the digital companion. And when you talked about art, you can also buy a banana for $6 million if it's stuck to a wall. So people have very kind of interesting conceptions of value. Uh, but I agree with you. I think that it doesn't make sense to say that you only value things based on how much sweat and blood went into it. Although I would say that I think some Russian authors, did come up with good stuff after all the bleeding. I mean, I think I'm happy that Tolstoy and Dostoevsky did, spend a bit of time in those dark
Mm.
places to come up with something good. But I think it's true. We will have very good quality content. There will be AI generated or AI supplemented. Um, so I think it's a question of finding the balance and the idea of being anti-AI, which I feel that there's a trend around for the moment. People say, "Oh, if it's AI, I kind of hate it automatically." Makes no sense, and I suspect that will go away as we move forward. Um, Now, there's another area that I want to talk to you about because you have been obviously active on social media. You have a following of around 25,000 plus people on X. You've also started to go on Blue Sky. And of course, I want to ask you about the battle of the channels. So, how do you feel about the three channels that actually I think are, for the moment, top of mind for people in Brussels, the EU, which it's basically X, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. So, what is your experience of X and Blue Sky in this latest surge that we've seen post election, where Blue Sky has picked up millions of new users that seem to be getting real engagement? So, what's been your experience, and where do you think we're heading?
I think we can all agree that Elon Musk mismanaged Twitter X, and this has an impact. It does have an impact, and never mind the users, the advertisers are not happy, the shareholders are not happy. I mean, there's not a single stakeholder in the whole Twitter X ecosystem who is happy right now. So it's a bad place to be right now. It's always been a little bit toxic. But so was Reddit, I mean, sometimes there are these places on the internet where people can hide behind the screen name and then, have this sort of behavior that really hurts other people. That's typical for the internet. But on Twitter X specifically, every time I open it, you have to be a little bit like a masochist to open up Twitter today, because in the feed, the alt-right, and there's a certain discourse that gets more attention from the algorithm than before. I've seen a difference. And I know there have been waves before in the past years, so people say, I'm leaving Twitter, but now they actually are. And there've always been a number of decent alternatives like Mastodon and Threads by Instagram. Blue Sky has been around for a while now, but I've seen Blue Sky grow it had a significant growth in terms of users last year, and that is important because there are always a lot of new social media platforms, and then sometimes they don't make it. Remember Clubhouse, Be Real. You need a certain you need to reach a certain threshold of users before the network effect comes into existence. You know, if your friends are on Threads, then you will also download and install Threads and Instagram to be able to join them, because otherwise you're missing out. So enough people have to move from one place to another for everyone to follow. And I could be wrong, but I think it happened last year with specifically Blue Sky. And the irony is, of course, that Blue Sky was a project that spun out of Twitter. But I like the way it's a challenge for this small company, you know, because they were a little surprised by this influx of millions of new users, because with more users, more problems. That's inevitable. There's more. You need more content moderation. You need more, safety measures. You need more employees to take care of, security moderation, and they were not ready for that. So, but I have to admire their CEO. Her name is Jay. Forget last name. Blue Sky from the start positions itself as an open platform. Technically, it is open. You can write APIs and write your own applications on top of Blue Sky, which is similar to Discord or Mastodon, for example. That's already great. But they also communicate in a very open way. And whenever the servers went down because they were surprised by the millions of new users, they just tell everyone what's going on. And you might say, yeah, of course they should. It's been a while, there's not a lot of companies out there that still do it. The only other CEO that does that is Brian Chesky of Airbnb. He uses his social media account, again, as a personal brand, not as a corporate account, to communicate about how well or how badly Airbnb is doing and what they're launching. But other than that, it's refreshing to see how they handle their sudden growth and popularity. However, we don't know where it will go, because the other social media platforms eventually they will need to have some sort of an income. And the old model was to behave like a media company and attract advertisers. The somewhat newish version is to go to offer freemium. It appears as they're going for that second, so that you have like a paid version of Blue Sky with more features, probably, and verified accounts. Up until now, my experience on Blue Sky has been very positive. I'm experimenting with it. I'm posting similar content on LinkedIn, X, and Blue Sky. And the engagement is a lot higher on Blue Sky. So people actually talk. They talk on Blue Sky. And that's been a while, I've been blogging and active on social media since 2004. So literally 20 years. And at first it was all about conversations. It was all about conversations and sharing ideas, and then getting, friendly fire from people like you. And I had almost forgotten about that part of the internet. And now on Blue Sky for the first time, there's other weird people like me who are interested in similar things like me, and also, which I like a lot, people who are interested in things that open my mind. So it's refreshing. I hope they will be able to keep up this whole vibe, because remember, Google at first in their mission statement they had "Do no evil." It was actually part
Yep.
of their mission statement at first,
Yeah,
and then as the company gradually evolved into a a, yeah, a capitalist company, they silently removed the do
yeah.
no evil from their mission statement.
Yeah, I think that Blue Sky is going through a very interesting
Yeah.
period, and basically, for the community that we focus on, the EU, you don't need a huge amount of people for it to be a viable community. So if you get 20, 30, 40,000 people who start using it, the journalists, the decision makers, etc., that's enough to get that critical mass. It's not necessarily the global one, but I think what I see is a lot of journalists,
Yes.
a lot of experts, a lot of academics,
Hmm.
and I think the starter packs, which is
That's
what
great.
they offer, to basically say, here's a list of people you should follow if you're interested in this topic, EU politics, or or discussing social channels or whatever. So I think that's very helpful. And then what I like as well is that you can choose what kind of feed you want to get, from the simple, feeds of my friends, feeds of certain topics, or feeds of hashtags, and even Matthew Laurie, who posts on LinkedIn quite a bit, has been doing AI feeds. So you basically
Mhm.
kind of filter the content. And again, as you said, I think the API, the technology behind the platform, is allowing people to do that. I was quite optimistic with Threads that they would do something, because of the critical mass when they launched and they opened up in Europe. But basically, their decision to kind of kill politics, it was, at least for the community that we lived in, it just didn't
Mhm.
make any sense. And there's still really algorithmic control,
Mhm.
much tighter. And I just don't think the kind of engagement is the same for a certain community. So I now see a clear kind of increase of the community on Blue Sky. I think, and I've seen that on your channel as well, and I've heard that from many people, that X is just not delivering the engagement. So we're
Mhm.
talking about objective, nothing to do with the politics. It's like you post a thing, you're not getting the likes or the click throughs, even if you have 20, 30,
Yeah.
40,000 followers. And that means, very pragmatically, people will move away. uh, LinkedIn is working very well. I think when you post something and you get a kind of conversation underneath it, not the same content necessarily than for Blue Sky. But what I find very interesting with you as well is that you have your newsletter, your blog, and I think you have this kind of. I think people need this combination of tools to tell the story, but also not to have everything in one single platform. And that's my advice to people who really like LinkedIn. It's like, it's great, but it's not your platform. So in the end, something
Yeah.
might happen as well. So be cautious. Are you
You,
feeling that your kind of newsletter plus blog is also becoming more important now that maybe social is less useful or
you,
powerful?
you need a owned media, and with owned media, I mean that you're not dependent on the algorithm. And Joe Polizzi, who is the thought leader in the field of content marketing, once said, "Do not build your house on rented land."
Yep.
So even if
Great
you're
quote.
able to build an audience and your personal brand on, for example, LinkedIn, something might happen. You might. For I know there's this LinkedIn expert in Belgium called Mick Adam, and he was kicked. So he built his whole empire on LinkedIn because he was the LinkedIn expert. And then last year, all of a sudden, his account was removed. He couldn't log in. It was deactivated. He eventually returned, but my point is, you do not
Mm,
own that account, and you do not control which one of your followers gets to see your content, because that is decided by the algorithm, and the algorithm changes, and it has a mind of its own. So that is why I still consider my blog and my newsletter as my most important channels. And it's hard. I mean, I've started the newsletter in June 2018, and from the start, I wanted it to be a weekly newsletter. I've seen so many newsletters start with a lot of enthusiasm, and then after a while, life happens, and then you forget about it. If you want to build a reputation, persistency and being persistent and consistent.
yeah.
That is the most important thing of all. And I know I remember sometimes I don't feel well. Once I remember, I'm going to create, I create my newsletter. I write it every Friday afternoon, so that it's published on Saturday. I was traveling and I was in a tent on a mountain, on an island, in a lake, in the jungle in Rwanda. So, and still, I still did the newsletter. It's, I highly advise to have at least one owned media channel, whether it's a media type style, a blog or a newsletter, but do not put all of your eggs in someone's social media platform's basket. It can be taken away. Or let's just say these Instagram influencers. I know a few who built like a whole little side hustle and a business by working with brands, and they missed the TikTok train because it takes different audience, different skills, videos, and they're losing income now because advertisers are now experimenting with working with TikTok influencers. So they may have like 50,000 followers on Instagram. It doesn't buy them anything. Likes
Right.
don't pay your bill.
Yeah, no, I think your advice is excellent, and this is something that we've been looking at and basically recommending to our clients, is just have these multiple channels and indeed own them, including mailing lists, newsletters, blogs. Now, talking about big trends for 2025, you are teaching students of communication marketing. So when they tell you, what should I do in the future? What should I study? What skills do I need? And how does that match the big trends that you see coming up in 25?
I really push them towards becoming skilled in the short term. So by the time they graduate, in making short vertical videos, using CapCut, for example. And that's what TikTok changed. TikTok was the most downloaded app during the lockdowns because everyone was bored out of their skull and you had other people in the room. So you wanted to be entertained and zone out. And there was TikTok, right? Today, all of social media platforms will put the TikTok style video first. There's YouTube Shorts, there's Instagram Reels, and then even on Facebook, now even LinkedIn wants you to post short vertical videos. So, and I know in the market that there's a high demand for people who are employees who are able to produce these short vertical videos as video ads or as organic content on social media. So that is something that's easy to fix. CapCut specifically has a great YouTube channel where they will teach you how to shoot videos, edit videos. Of course they do, but it's actually quite well made. And then I have a handbook, Video Marketing Like a Pro, where I also explain that lighting is still important, how to tell a story using video, etc. So in the short term, that is definitely something to go for. Secondly, I think that we'll have content and channels will be all over the place. So that's fragmented. It's really all over the place. So there is an opportunity for people who say, okay, that's it. I will curate this for you. Each week or each month, we will give you the top 5 best interior design tips from all over the internet, right? So I think there's a lot of value in that, in taking away this pressure from people and say, I will filter out only the stuff for you. Follow me and you will know what to do. Follow me and you know what to do. The curation, I really enjoy that. And then both on the training side and on the hiring side, we should look at the capability of people to look at the end result and decide if it's good enough by focusing on other things like, will this have an impact? This video, will people actually buy the product after seeing this? Will it change their mind somehow? So focus on impact. And if what you're putting out there doesn't have an impact that is linked to your business success, then don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do things just for the likes. What are you doing? Are you working for Instagram? No. You're working for yourself or for your employer. So keep your eyes on the prize. Look before you post. Is this somehow helping my business grow? If the answer is not, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't work for the algorithm. Make the algorithm work for you.
Excellent. Okay, so now it's time for our recommendations.
Mm. Can I
We're
maybe?
Recommendations of the week.
Yeah, we just have. We'll cut this, but
Yeah,
there's a jingle.
I did
Tell
not.
me. Okay, recommendation
Well,
time.
we've been talking about AI a lot, but there's one that is a bit of it's a league of its own. It's called Perplexity, and Perplexity.ai is it's very hard to explain. It's very I use it a lot for academic research. Somehow it combines looking up things, showing you the sources, doing the thinking work, structuring it well. So from a distance, it might look a lot like the three we mentioned before, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. But for some reason, for academic research, it's more thorough. It's the other three, they're so eager to please that they want to give you a response quickly and briefly. Perplexity doesn't do that. If it needs like 2 pages to explain you what the trends for social media are in 2024, it will take the 2 places and it will be sourced really professionally. So I kind of like Perplexity. Try it out.
Okay. Any other book or podcast that you wanted to recommend to the audience?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I'm a Seth Godin fanboy. He's coming to Belgium in May.
Okay.
And I bought tickets. Yeah, he's speaking for the UBA, which is the Union of Belgian Advertisers. I'll be there. So Seth Godin, obviously, he's been around for a long time. He's written literally, I think, dozens of books, and all of them sell really well. And it's funny because he's a blogger, but he you cannot comment on his blogs.
Mm.
It's turned off. He's not posting on social media. This guy is like just a planet on its own. But he was the first one to point out that modern market, for me, is the father of modern marketing, because he was the first one to point out that you shouldn't push your messages with pop-ups and annoying, unskippable ads. You're just annoying your target audience into buying from you. He said you have to pull them in through content marketing. So that's what I like about him. He also launched the concept of minimum viable audience. Just make a small group of people really happy, and that's a good start business-wise for your business. So Seth Godin published another book. The previous one was called This Is Marketing, and now the latest one is called This Is Business. And I know it's just a collection of his blog posts, but I've been highlighting so many things, and I will be quoting this book in my courses for many months to come. Seth Godin, This Is Business.
Excellent. So I will definitely be buying that one. So my recommendation actually comes from a meeting where an advertiser was discussing a brand called Liquid Metal, Liquid Death.
Liquid Death.
Liquid Death, which is a brand of water, and it has a fascinating story. And this is the backstory from a podcast interview with the CEO, and it's by Guy Raz, who has a series called How I Built This. So I would recommend listening to that. It's fascinating. Also, there was a long discussion which I had with a group of people about the brand. So people were very, very annoyed at the brand, saying, "I will not buy this. It's stupid. Why would you put Liquid Death on a water thing?" This was a discussion in India. However, I think once you understand the backstory, people, you can see that it wasn't immediately launched. There was an advert before, a Facebook page, and that allowed him to get a real sense that this was going to work. This person is an advertiser, so it was a great story. So very, very interesting. I don't think it works every time. I think there's an element of luck and randomness, but I think it's a very interesting idea of doing something that nobody thinks is possible. So with that, I think that's all we have time for. It's been great having you on the show, Clo. Looking forward to continuing our conversations on Blue Sky, a little bit less on X, and on LinkedIn. So have a fantastic weekend. I will see you around.
Bye, everyone.
And stay on after the thing. I think we have the close.
Thanks for watching this episode of ZN Live Podcast. If you liked it, please give us a like, comment, and share it on your social media. See you on the next episode, and remember, stay always one step ahead.